Welcome to the Pardes channel. Today we explain Prophet Samuel 1 chapter 9 in a clear and simple way, step by step. Okay, let's dive right into this explainer. We're going to unpack how an ordinary and frankly super annoying search for livestock turns into a destiny-altering encounter. In this chapter we actually get the origin story of Israel's very first king. But here's the catch. It doesn't begin in some grand royal court, and it doesn't begin on a bloody battlefield. It starts with something incredibly mundane. And honestly, that stark contrast is exactly what makes the simple meaning of this text so deeply fascinating.
So we're going to explore this narrative by asking one big, fundamental question. How exactly does a frustrating search for lost donkeys end up leading to a crown? We're going to see firsthand how divine timing actually works through our everyday inconveniences. So often we read ancient texts and we just expect these immediate, massive, sky-splitting miracles. But the simple, literal meaning here, what we call the Peshat, shows us a very relatable, very human experience. It's just a guy getting lost, getting tired, and simply trying to finish a frustrating chore for his dad.
Here is the roadmap for our explainer today as we follow the text chronologically. 1. Context and lost donkeys. 2. Seeking the seer's guidance. 3. God's revelation to Samuel. 4. The feast and special portion. 5. A secret message awaits, and we'll wrap up with 6. Key ideas and life lessons.
All right, kicking things off with Section 1. Context and lost donkeys.
The chapter opens up in verses 1 through 5 by introducing us to a man named Kish. He's from the tribe of Benjamin, and he's described as a man or standing, so a pretty prominent, wealthy individual. And Kish has a son named Saul. Now, what is really interesting here is the stark contrast the text explicitly highlights for us. It tells us that Saul was an incredibly impressive young man. In fact, he was without equal among the Israelites. He was literally a head taller than anyone else around. He already looks like a king. But what is this impressive, towering figure actually doing? Well, his father Kish assigns him the most mundane chore imaginable. He says, "Take one of the servants with you and go and look for the donkeys." These were valuable work animals that had just wandered off. So Saul gets sent out on this dusty, tiring, completely unglamorous errand to fetch them.
So Saul and his servant set out. And this timeline right here maps out their exhausting and totally fruitless trek. According to verses 4 and 5, they hike through the hill country of Ephraim, then through the area around Shalisha. Nothing. 0 donkeys. Then they go into the district of Shalim. Still not there. They sweep all the way through the territory of Benjamin, still empty-handed. Finally, on the 3rd day, they reach the district of Zuph. And by this point, Saul is just done. He's tired, he's frustrated, and he turns to his servant and basically says, "Look, come on, let's just go back, or my father is going to stop thinking about the donkeys and start worrying about us." It's such a practical, relatable moment, isn't it? He's been gone so long, he knows the panic back home is going to shift from missing livestock to missing sons.
Moving right along to Section 2. Seeking the seer's guidance.
So just as Saul is ready to throw in the towel in verses 6 through 10, his servant speaks up. He points out that right in the town they're approaching, there happens to be a highly respected man of God, and everything this guy says comes true. The servant suggests, "Hey, let's just ask him for directions," but Saul hesitates. He says, "Well, if we go, what can we even give the man? The food in our sacks is completely gone." You have to remember, in ancient Near Eastern culture, approaching a prominent leader or a holy man totally empty-handed was considered highly disrespectful. So the crucial turning point here is that when Saul is worrying about not having a gift, his servant steps up to the plate. He reveals he actually has 1/4 of a shekel of silver on him. That's only about 1/10 of an ounce. It's a very modest sum, but it's just enough to show respect. Saul agrees, and they head into the town.
Now, I absolutely love this next part. Right here in verse 9, the biblical text actually hits pause on its own narrative to give us a quick history lesson. It defines an ancient cultural term, clarifying that before these holy men were called prophets, they were actually known as seers. The Hebrew word is roeh, literally meaning one who sees. It refers to someone who has the spiritual sight to inquire of God and see what is completely hidden to everyone else. Things like the location of some lost donkeys, or, the identity of a future king. It's this beautiful little editorial note that ensures we understand the specific terminology of that era.
Okay, Section 3. God's revelation to Samuel.
Moving into verses 11 through 17. As Saul and his servant are trudging up the hill to the town, they run into some girls coming out to draw water. They ask them, "Hey, is the seer here?" And the girls give them very specific, highly urgent instructions. They say the seer literally just arrived today because the town is having a sacrifice up at the high place. In Hebrew, this is called a bama. It's a localized, elevated site where people gathered for sacrifices and communal fellowship meals, well before the central temple was ever built in Jerusalem. The girls tell Saul to hurry up. This sets up a really urgent timeline to intercept the seer before he goes up to bless the food because the people absolutely won't eat until he does.
So as Saul hurries into the town, he walks right into Samuel. And guys, this brilliantly illustrates the dramatic irony of this text. Saul thinks he's just bumping into some local holy man to ask about a few lost animals. But verses 15 through 17 completely pull back the curtain for us. God had already spoken to Samuel the day before. God said, "About this time tomorrow I will send you a man from the land of Benjamin. Anoint him leader over my people Israel. He will deliver my people from the hand of the Philistines." And as soon as Samuel lays eyes on Saul, God confirms it right then and there. This is the man. So while Saul thinks he's just out looking for donkeys, God has literally been guiding his footsteps to this exact town at this exact hour to meet the prophet.
Which brings us to section 4, the feast and special portion. In verses 18 through 24, Saul approaches Samuel, completely unaware of who he actually is, and politely asks where the seer's house is. Samuel replies, "I am the seer." He then tells Saul to go on up to the high place to eat with him, and then, remarkably, he tells him right away, "Hey, don't worry about those donkeys you lost 3 days ago, because they've already been found." Then Samuel just drops a massive hint. He says, "And to whom is all the desire of Israel turned, if not to you and all your father's family?" Now Saul is absolutely stunned by this. He exhibits pure humility. He replies, "Wait, am I not a Benjamite from the smallest tribe of Israel? And is not my clan the least of all the clans?" You see the contrast? Saul sees himself as just a regular guy from a tiny, insignificant family, but Samuel sees the very man the entire nation of Israel has been begging for.
Brushing aside Saul's modesty, Samuel takes immediate action. He brings Saul and his servant right into the main hall at the high place. He elevates this wandering, dusty, exhausted young man and his servant and seats them at the very head of the hall, right above approximately 30 invited guests. Imagine how jarring this must have been for Saul. He walked into this town hoping to spend a quarter shekel just to get some basic directions, and suddenly he's the guest of honor at a major communal feast, hosted by the single most powerful spiritual leader in the nation.
But it gets even more specific than that. Samuel turns to the cook and says, "Bring the piece of meat I gave you, the one I told you to lay aside." So the cook brings over a specific, reserved leg of meat and sets it right in front of Saul. Samuel tells him to eat it, explaining that it was kept specifically for him for this exact occasion, from the very moment he invited the guests. Now, this reserved portion of meat signifies immense cultural honor. But more than that, it proves to Saul, without a shadow of a doubt, that Samuel had been anticipating his arrival long before Saul ever even left his home looking for that lost livestock.
All right, section 5, a secret message awaits.
Looking at verses 25 to 27, after coming down from the high place back into the town, Samuel doesn't just send Saul off to some random guest room. No, he talks with Saul privately on the roof of his house. In ancient Israel, flat roofs were very common living spaces. They were cool in the evening and offered a lot of privacy. The text doesn't tell us exactly what they discussed up there that night, but it allows the immense gravity of the day's unbelievable events to really settle in. Saul has been given hints, he's been given public honor, he's had a feast, and now he has the undivided attention of the seer under the open sky.
So they wake up around daybreak. Samuel calls up to Saul on the roof, telling him to get ready so he can send him on his way. They walk outside together, heading down to the edge of the town. And right as they are about to leave, Samuel orchestrates absolute privacy. He turns to Saul and says, "Tell the servant to go on ahead of us." The servant walks on, leaving Saul completely alone with the prophet. Then Samuel says, "But you stay here a while, so that I may give you a message from God." And that is exactly where the chapter ends. It leaves us hanging on this brilliant cliffhanger right before the actual anointing takes place.
Finally, section 6, key ideas and life lessons.
So what can we actually take away from all this? First, we see clearly that God often works through mundane inconveniences. Saul thought he was just having a terrible week dealing with lost animals, but that exact frustration was the vehicle used to guide him to his true destiny. Second, early greatness requires deep humility. When offered immense honor, Saul didn't boast about his impressive height or strength. He pointed to the smallness of his tribe. And third, it really pays off to listen to wise advice, regardless of someone's rank. Think about it. If Saul hadn't listened to his servant's idea about the quarter shekel and seeking out the seer, he would have just walked home completely empty-handed.
To summarize the simple, literal steps of chapter 9,
An exhausting, multi-day search for donkeys leads a prominent young man and his servant to an unfamiliar town. The servant offers his own silver to seek the seer's help. We find out God had already revealed Saul's impending arrival and identity to Samuel the day before. Saul is absolutely shocked to receive extreme public honor at a sacrifice and feast, and finally, as he leaves the town, a private, divine revelation awaits him that will alter the course of history forever.
Which leaves us with something pretty incredible to think about. What mundane detours or frustrating inconveniences in your own life might actually be leading you to your true purpose? Thank you for learning with us. If this helped you understand the chapter better, like, subscribe, and join us for the next chapter.